I deeply dove into the world of the sperm whale. And in my research, I saw that the reason that their nose is so big is because right in the front of their face, we call it a nose, but it's more like an apparatus in the front of their face, their elongated face, that's where their bladder exists. And this, when they're normally at the surface, because these mammals are air breathing mammals, when they're at the surface, it acts like a buoyant, air filled bladder. But then when they're ready to dive deep, what happens is the contents of the bladder sort of crystallize. I'm using the word, I'm paraphrasing, to then act as a weighted sink. If you've ever been scuba diving, you know you've got to put weights around your belt so that you can sink quicker. That's what it becomes. So you got the whole front of their face, my friends, inside which there's an air-filled bladder-like device that then gets harder and gets heavier and allows them to sink nose first down, 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 down into the depth. Meanwhile, the rest of their whole body is doing chemical adjustments so that they don't get what's called the bends. If you've ever been scuba diving, if you come up too fast, of course, the nitrogen that's stored in your muscles and in your tissue just explodes and you die or something really terrible. So not that. These sperm whales, they figured out a way, nature figured out a way to store the nitrogen in another spot and then do the thing while they dive deep, maintaining a lower heart rate so that they don't need as much circulation. They do all this chemistry in their body naturally so they can go way deeper than we even thought. Now here we are, we've got roughly the height of 100 or 130 story building is the depth to which the sonar, thank you, science teacher Mafi, she put it in the chat. So you've got this area that's like 130 story building deep that the sonar thought was the depth. But it turns out they go miles deep. Miles. In fact, the scientists are still trying to figure out, so how? So what? How did they do this? Yeah. The actual diving deep of the sperm whale goes deeper than ever imagined before. So deep that by the time, and this is what I'm remembering, by the time any one of us would have tried to go there, we would have, the depth is 113 times the atmospheric pressure of the surface. So we're not going that deep. We're not doing it. So the sperm whales do it, and they have all this technology in them. Here's the most exciting part, and I love that our author of the month speaks to these sperm whales as if they are the predecessor to the human being. This is why. There are a couple things. One, the sperm whale's brain, 10 times as big as our brain. And two, they actually have communication. So scientists have actually measured their what do they ping? They have like voice. I forgot what they call it. They do these sounds. Those sounds that they emit, like little tick, those clicks, my dear, those clicks. If we were near a sperm whale, you and me, they could click so loud that they would burst our eardrums. They would burst our eardrums. And the amount of decibels is more like 10 times what we can manage. So when divers come into the water next to a sperm whale, they're like, so I'm hoping you don't kill me. Why do they have such loud clicks? Because they can make conversation with others like them in their family miles and miles and miles away. They're communicating with each other in a language. So the scientists said, well, let's go ahead and map out the sounds that they're clicking. And they found out, when they mapped them out as if it's Morse code, they found out that different pods had different frequencies. They had a different language, let's say. Different languages for different pods. And then they took individual ones, and using machine learning, shout out to machine learning, they mapped the sounds of individual whales within the pods and found out that each individual whale has its own way of saying what it says, pitch, tone, frequency of the click within the language of the clicking, and they're calling that their identity. So, wow. Okay, what does all this mean? Do you realize that in the beginning, when spear fishers started focusing on the sperm whale because of there's a covering, an oil covering over their nose, which it got its name sperm because people said, "Oh my God, looks like sperm. Let's call it a sperm whale." It's not. It's kind of an oil. Thank you very much. But they were being farmed for makeup, candles, and other kinds of cosmetics. That's where they were being hunted. And so because they were being hunted like this, the sperm whales talked to each other over vast distances, and they were not as easy to get. They figured out as a group how to reduce the numbers of hunting success 58%. Now, we're saying that the first year, 100% of whales got. And by the time the second or third or fourth, whatever the time period is, they measured it again, and now only 42% are successful. It could not be that the hunters kind of messed up consistently. No, it has to be that over the communication but from pod to pod over vast distances, they figured out how to dodge. If you saw Avatar 3, this is kind of what they were kind of referring to. So, what are we talking about? We're talking about a group of beings. They're mammals, they're air breathing, but they're so much more than that. Do they have language? Yes. Is it sophisticated? Absolutely. Do they communicate over vast distances and come up with a good plan when they realize that, I think we're being targeted, then they do it. This is the highest intelligence in what we would have initially thought was the lowest of species. Can we get away from high versus low? Can we get away from putting humanity and life itself, like not even if it's humanity? Can we say that humanity encompasses more than just humans? Can we somehow start to be compassionate and inclusive in how we see these physical groups of beings? Because if we can do that for these schools and pods of whales, then maybe we can do that for people that don't look like us. And I'm waiting for that boom. Think about it. There are some people that are so violently and in-your-face racist that will run to the front of the line when it's time to protect a tiger or a lion or a dog. Dude, some people treat their dogs and the idea of dogs so much better than they do this migrant or the idea of immigrant. This is wild. And I, again, like our friend Alexis Pauline Gumbs, I feel like, well, if we could somehow find kinship and compassion, however you get there, I don't care. Just get there. And if we can then somehow find ourselves in these bigger things and then take a note from these bigger groups that have been here before us, connecting to their true nature, not really creating so much distance between them and their higher selves. Because even though I'm telling you that these whales know how to communicate in depth and in complex language, that even though they do that very well, what they haven't done that I can see, they haven't created all of the material distractions and started treating the material distractions as if that was their truth. I don't see them creating structures that then they can put their higher self onto the structure and then be defined by that, like we do. I don't see them putting stars. Tamara and I were talking about how today you get a lot of social media people who try to show up and they try to be perfect, and then we as a collective put them on pedestals as if that's the perfect thing to go for, and we forget who we really are. We disconnect from our spirit, and then we feel empty and don't know why. So I don't see them doing that, is what I'm trying to say. So if we were to take lessons from our friends in the ocean, well, it would probably sound a lot like what Ernest Holmes said. He says in The Science of Mind, we are each part of the one universal mind, and that we have vast depths within us.